Radio on Berlin.
Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren, zur aktuellen Kamera. Die Übersicht.
Here we are, one beautiful moment, going from station to station. Meep, meep. We are here at the Alexanderplatz. Jason Honea, my name is Rinus Van Alebeek, and Adrian Shephard, the technique and the editing for the show. And this is another episode of Radio on Historic, and it will be on Alexanderplatz. And what we're looking at now is a map of Berlin Mitte, which you don't see. And
I would really like to have this on my wall.
And it's not a map like any other map, because all the buildings here are drawn, so you can recognize them as buildings. With also the Alexanderplatz. Alexanderplatz, a very small open green space at the right hand side of the map, because it's the eastern side of Berlin Mitte. And from there we see between two buildings and under the railway of the Alexanderbahnhof, we see the road which is called the Königstraße. This is 1928. But in 1905 they made plans to change this all,
Right.
the Alexanderplatz. And what we had here were the Königskolonnaden, the King's Colonnades. Because this was where you entered the city with here the first city wall directly on the Spree, and the second city wall directly there where now is the U-Bahn and the S-Bahn ring. So here you entered this road, this place, and you had the Kolonnaden. You know this?
No.
You know the Heinrich von Kleist Park?
No.
We've been to the Heinrich von Kleist Park, and the Heinrich von Kleist Park is on the Hauptstraße.
Okay.
And from the Hauptstraße, which is
Schöneberg.
going to Schöneberg.
Yes, of course I know the Kleist Park. I thought you meant Kleist Park here.
No, Heinrich von Kleist Park.
Okay, sure. In Schöneberg, yeah.
So, if you come there, you see on your right this very old columns that you think, well, what is this doing here? It's coffee milk brown, and it's clearly from another century than everything surrounding the Schöneberg area. So when you see that, you think, well, what is this doing here? But they didn't want to destroy it. They were here.
Yeah.
At either side of the road.
Right.
And we are now looking at a depot.
TK Maxx.
TK Maxx, and it's got dark.
That dark glass.
Dark glass, and on top of it, slightly coming out of the facade to have this Rubik cube effect.
Actually, it's a gym, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a gym.
Anyway, it's new, and it's next to the arch, which is the entrance for the trains to the Alexanderbahnhof. Behind this again is the Park Inn, which was formerly the Europe Hotel, I think, for DDR. You have the Peter Behrens' first ideas for the extension of the Alexanderplatz, and at the other side you have Alexanderplatz as well, where we don't go, because that was an unfinished project by the DDR architects, with the house for the electricity, the house for the teachers, the house for the statistics, the house for the travelers, etc. 4 high rises at the far end of the square, and in it there was those Behrens things, also the remnants of an unfinished project, and a big warehouse. Ever since the fall of the wall, there have been cranes on that side of the Alexanderplatz, and it's a never-ending story.
It seems actually now more than ever.
Yeah, because they're building that, what will it be, 150, 200 meter high rise over there. And once that is finished, you don't have much space anymore. So I think they will start tearing down other buildings so that they can build it new.
So all of these other buildings here, over here, for instance, that with the Fit X on top, that 9-story structure just in front of us.
Yeah.
Doesn't that enjoy landmark status? I don't think that would be raised, would it? This building here directly in front of us, see that Fit X, that big orange X up at the top? Okay, that's like a 9-story building, 12-story building maybe? Doesn't that enjoy landmark status? Isn't that a pre-1989 Alexanderplatz structure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if that enjoys landmark status and will not be raised. Yeah?
Oh, yeah, but I mean within the square,
Okay.
not bordering the square.
Got it. Okay.
But because within the square is all capitalist structures
Sure.
and you interchangeable.
Okay. And you mean like the Saturn, that building over there, all that
Yeah,
stuff will probably
yeah,
be
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
This is great. Where did you get this?
Knezebeckstraße.
Wow, I really want to have it.
Knezebeckstraße, and they have a lot of maps. And I can send you the link once again.
Cool.
Because you can buy forever.
Right.
maps.
So I wanted to correct myself real quick. Here on the south side of the palace, that is not Königsplatz, that's Schlossplatz.
Okay.
Okay? If I'm not mistaken, at one point in time, it might have been called Königsplatz. And this Neptunbrunnen, which sits right smack dab here in the middle of the Alexanderplatz on this side, that was originally at the Schlossplatz. But in December of 1940, when the RAF began their first long-range raids against the city of Berlin, and the Nazis then realized that Berlin is not impervious to air attack, that's when they began burning a few brain cells and figuring out that lots of things, including fountains, if not different bits of statuary, monuments, etc., all needed to be brought underground and protected. So that thing was dismantled. I'm not sure where they kept it. But then after the war, when Alexanderplatz was back up on its feet and running, so to speak, hardly anything like what it was before, they then decided to park it right over here. A little voice, a little bird, so to speak, told me the city is making plans to move that back over to Schlossplatz. What they're going to put in its stead, I have no idea, but I'm sure they'll find something modern and kind of EU celebratory to put right there. Why is Alexanderplatz called Alexanderplatz?
Well, that was the visit of the great
Tsar Alexander.
Alexander. And he was married to some girl from Baden Fürstenhaus. And if I remember right, there was a Max von Baden.
Okay.
Who and here we are at the end of the World War One. Who was heading the government for a very short time, because he would have better connections with William I.
Okay. Definitely.
Yeah.
But I thought the primary reason for his visit was to discuss.
We are in 1805,
1805. A storm brewing on the horizon, namely Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah.
That's what they really had to discuss. Yeah. And only a year later, guess who would come prancing, dare I say, gallivanting through the Brandenburg Gate, followed by his marshals and generals, none other than.
Yeah, because in the beginning the Prussians were a little bit siding the French.
Yeah.
And then, and I don't know what Alexander offered them.
Yeah, I don't know either, but hold on, I do, I think. Didn't it have something to do with all those coal fields in North Rhine-Westphalia? For some reason he had some sort of influence over that, if I'm not mistaken. And Prussia really wanted to get their hands on those coal fields.
Oh, yeah.
Around the Ruhrpott. But I don't know what kind of influence he had exercised over that part of Europe at that point in time. But I think he did have some influence.
Yeah.
But it was after the acquisition of those coal fields, after the wars of liberation, that Germany was not only, or that Prussia was not only to export some of that coal, but that coal would then provide all the energy they needed to drive their industrial revolution. Yeah? That's when they began making money.
That's why Stalin wanted to get hands on it.
Yeah.
There was a history to it, but that's a funny thing about all those royalty. Their history is always how they look in those ceremonial dresses, how they look in their ceremonial buildings, and how they look as royalty. But you never get that aspect that they've got a lot of money and a lot of business going on. Even the Hohenzollern, when they became emperors, they had stone fountains of 2-3 meters high, and where you make tiles and things like that. So he had a stone mill, making this, and he was negotiating with Wertheim if they wouldn't sell those shit.
Okay.
You know? and that's an emperor for you.
Yeah.
So begging that his tiles would be sold at a warehouse.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have to go back a little bit in the sun, because then we've got a view on the square itself.
No problem. So I oftentimes get asked on my tours, What was this? What was Alexanderplatz called? Alexanderplatz. This was totally residential before the war. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't an Alexanderplatz.
No.
It was completely residential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I can get out the map again.
Okay. Where do you want to set it up?
We can sit on the stairs there.
Okay, it might be a little loud because the cosplay kids are over here doing their manga dances and stuff.
Yeah.
Sonnabend. Sonnabend.
So we're here-ish.
So what we're looking at is still that map
Right.
again
Do you want me to hold this?
between the Alexanderplatz and the Schlossplatz.
Got it.
And that's the whole area, including the Marienkirche, which is now the Alexanderplatz. And if count with me, dear listener, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 blocks. And those blocks were massive.
Are you not including these?
I'm not including this. So, but also this counts because this has gone down as well. So,
Right, all missing. Sure.
yeah. So there's 7 more blocks, and here as well you've got 3 more blocks. So
Right.
that's 10. That's 20 blocks that were heavily bombed,
Exactly.
very much destroyed. But you had streets which were called the Neue Friedrichstraße. You have the Klosterstraße, which still exists, but not up to the Alexanderplatz.
Right.
The extension was up to the Friedrichstraße, which is completely at the other end, and interrupted by what is now Mitte. And you have the Judenstraße, which still exists, but it went on to the Rosenstraße, which also exists. So it's interrupted by the Alexanderplatz again. You have the Spandauer Straße, that one still exists because it's the middle between the Marx Engels Forum and the Alexanderplatz. That one still exists. But where there's a little park now, you also had the Heilgeiststraße and the Poststraße.
Poststraße.
All gone.
Okay.
All
yeah.
gone. So the whole idea was to put here in the middle this thing where we're sitting on the right now, which was the Fernsehturm, a television tower. And the television tower, for Ulbricht, the then head of the GDR, was very important because it was not possible to build a television tower in West Berlin. West Berlin had 3 airports, and they had various fly-in roads. So a television tower there would hinder those airplanes.
Right.
And that's what Ulbricht came in and said, okay, we are going to do this. And they discussed about the position, it should be in Friedrichspark, but he said, no, I want to have it right in the middle of the city, and it should become a landmark, but also the big needle in the middle of the town so that you have an orientation possibility from wherever you are. Because the layout of Berlin is with a radial system. You've got big roads like the beams of a star leading out of Berlin, and on each of those roads you can see the Fernsehturm.
Sure. You can see it from way out in the countryside too.
Yeah.
Built between 1961 and 1969, 368 meters tall. And it was finished just in time to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the founding of the GDR, October 1969. I've never been up at it actually. I've been terrified to go up. I'm terrified to go up there. I don't like heights. My son's been up there about 3 or 4 times. I won't go up there. Have you been up there?
No. No, I'm a little bit scared by the entrance. How much it costs to go there.
Yeah.
So what is it, 22 or 24 euro?
It depends on what you actually want to do up there. There are tickets for different things. I think for the dining room, the restaurant is about 28.
Oh, but that includes a currywurst that I don't eat.
I'm not sure what it includes, but I know that beers up there are really dang expensive. Yeah.
Berliner Alexanderplatz.
Okay, so from then on, the projection of this square became really, really adventurous. There were some old hardcore conservatives members in the government who said, no, we have to keep all these, we have to keep this neighborhood and restore it. But this is an expression of modernism, and it was more a project by the architects involved than the GDR. The GDR, they just said, okay, we put the means and the capacity, the material and the people, but you do the plan.
Got it.
So those architects, they went to Brazil to study how this center of Brazil was made, because there also was a big landing stretch in the middle.
Are you talking about Brasilia? This
yeah.
Brazilian capital? Yeah.
Yeah, that was built by Oscar Niemeyer, one of the big icons of modern architecture. They went also to Le Havre. Le Havre completely bombed when the English went away, and rebuilt, of course. And they went to study how that was rebuilt. They also went to Paris to study how the Eiffel Tower stood in that park. So the whole thing here was modeled after that. And Ulrich said one thing to the architect of this television tower: I don't want a chimney. I want something that is representative. I want something beautiful. And in that time, it was the first time that that Russia launched a satellite, the Sputnik.
Sputnik, yeah.
So as a homage to the Sputnik, you've got this disco ball on top of it.
Right.
That was Henselmann and a very big group of architects working together to get this up. They made several studies from how to do this, how to erect this. And then at the end, there was no company who actually wanted to build the disco ball.
Okay.
They thought, we don't know how to do it, and it was dangerous. And then they said to a company in Halle, you do it. And if you look at the side of it, you still see something that is formed like a locust.
Like a locust?
Yeah, those, like a plague. The plague.
This Heuschrecken thing, this grasshopper thing. It looks like a locust, really?
Yeah. Maybe we can see it if you walk to the right.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't even know what in the world you're talking about, but let's go check it out.
Oh no, you can't see it from here, because you have to go a little bit more out there. But there's a structure on it. It's like a giant locust clinging to it. But that's a crane.
Oh, the crane, of course.
Yeah, that's a crane.
I've seen it in operation before.
Yeah, so because first they made the frame of the iron, and then the crane, they got it all up, and then one after the other, those chrome plates were put against it.
Sir, certainly. So, I've actually seen the crane moving around the ball before.
Yeah.
I've seen it moving before. Yeah. Wow.
So then they had the landmark, but of course if you have this thing, you also have a thing that everybody is looking at, and you can't have it with big buildings surrounding it. You need an open space. And one thing that was very important for the architects, wherever you see it, the human body, and especially his head, has a very a position of the head which is like comfortable, and it's when it's inclined for 27 degrees. So this 27 degrees was the measure of the tower.
Okay.
So if you had your head like that you could see it everywhere, which I think is a very beautiful detail.
Right.
For this tower, they also went to Moscow, but of course they couldn't do a thing like Moscow because that one was over 500 meters high.
Wow.
So that's this. So the thing was.
Is the one in Moscow still there?
I guess so.
I guess so. Yeah.
So
500 meters tall. Wow.
So then they had this tower, and I'm anticipating the rest of the field. The thing is, and this was a beautiful thing for propaganda, is whenever the airplanes came to land on Tempelhof, they had to go over the Alexanderplatz. So they also designed the whole thing here so that it would look good from an airplane. Then the restaurant was also planned, and in the restaurant they had
the revolving floor.
Yeah, it was specially designed. Of course, also there, everything was modern. There was uniforms for the people behind the bar. No, the waitresses were red and the hosts, they were blue. And the waitresses, they were all selected. They were almost like pin-up girls for a calendar. They were all between 25 and 29 years old. They were the best looking girls from the whole of East Germany. And they all spoke 4 languages.
Oh wow.
Russian, German, English and French. And the uniforms, it looked a little bit like the stewardess Dan in the airplane. Another nice thing, and this is one of the most interesting times I think in the history of architecture, is that at one time you had the space age. So there was a vast belief in the future, and also a vast belief in the future that we would go and colonize planets. And of course their fantasy went already ahead. So how would those colonies on those planets, what would they look like? And that jumped back, that bounced back on the things that they designed here. So that ball, that disco ball, that silver ball, is already an expression of that space age.
The Sputnik reference.
Yeah.
Right.
And apparently also one of the entrances to the whole thing built around it was also like going into a spaceship.
Yeah. Okay, so where do we want to go now?
Well, we are still talking about the structure surrounding
It sounds beautiful. That's the fountain at the base of the TV tower.
surrounding the television tower.
Right, on the western side.
Yeah, which can be seen a little bit better if we go from a distance. Wow, it smells like a swimming pool.
It does smell like a swimming pool, doesn't it?
So, who is into, or knows somebody who is into this Japanese folding?
Origami?
Yeah.
I do know somebody who's very into it. Why?
Doesn't it look
like origami.
Doesn't it look like this architect has been playing with paper and has been folding it?
Barbara Masachi, Nikki Sutton's former girlfriend and somebody who used to also be in the Shitty Listener years ago, who loves origami, always commented that this reminded her of origami.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Maybe it was only possible at that time, and it can't be judged anymore to the criteria that we have now.
Okay.
It's so much defining that time and that playfulness that you've got another kind of ethics and aesthetics to it, no?
Yeah. Well, you did mention, you made the Sputnik reference, referring to that big shiny disco ball up there that houses the restaurant and bar, as being reminiscent of the Sputnik module. This origami work, let's just refer to it as that, okay, as well as these sort of like flying, dare I say, ornamental quasi-wing things over here up to the side, also kind of remind me of space age era supersonic aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. In some ways, it almost looks like the thing could literally lift off, doesn't it? It looks like it could fly if it needed to. You get what I'm saying?
You're completely right. As if the launch base is flapping its things aside, and then it would go up into future space.
I've not just once. I've had guests on my tours ask, "Does it fly?" And people have asked that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they fly it and they just park it all the time. It is neat. I've heard people refer to it as an eyesore before. But I've not only have I come to really like it, I really love it. And it actually gives me a good feeling when I show up here because it reminds me of all the fun I have going on these tours. Now, getting back to the Locust as you described it, I have seen it move almost 3/4 of the way around the ball before. I've also seen the arm in action.
There on the right side there's a little bit, but it's also on the very top.
Right. Have you also seen people hanging off this before?
Not yet.
Have you seen people scrubbing it?
No, not yet.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And not even bungee jumping.
Right.
But there's some kind of innocence in this.
Sure.
And the innocence directly links to optimism as well. There's also on the ground floor, there were shops, there were restaurants, and also on the walkabout ring, People could also sit there and restaurants and watch the Alexanderplatz. So it was very much for people living in this big city, coming here and come together and feel like you are in a big city.
Yeah.
So let's go to the other side, because it has become one unity. It's not only that they built the Fernsehturm and this square, which I will describe later.
But these 5, 6 story or these 8 story, whatever these buildings are, these apartment blocks, is that what you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know anything about them, but anyway, yeah.
That's part of the complex. So we are now on Alexanderplatz, and one of the, how do you call this piece of grass? And a path that is built by.
I don't think this was planned.
No, this is a shortcut found by pedestrians, and that's how
tourists.
there is no grass growing anymore.
So this monument here, this chewed up drill bit, this
might be interesting.
This is a monument to those people, to those souls who dug this extension of the U-Bahn underneath us. The work of an artist? Not quite. This piece, now designated as public art, was accidentally created during excavations for the new Rotes Rathaus underground station, where it connects to the 90-year-old Alex Tunnel. A 50-ton drill rig was carrying out clearance work for the project in 2013 when it came into contact with an iron girder in the ground. The drill locked the H-beam in a grip so powerful that it became twisted into almost perfect symmetry. After removal, construction personnel immediately saw that this work of accidental art had a unique aesthetic and could perhaps be preserved later and exhibited. Hence, the sculpture was placed around the Rotes Rathaus construction site at various locations, always visible to curious onlookers. Interest grew, and it was often photographed. More than once, the question was asked, is this a public art installation? The girder was originally used to support the buildings of Königstrasse, now Rathausstrasse, where preliminary works on the Alex Tunnel began in 1927. At that time, 1,800 workers in round-the-clock shifts managed to finish the prep work in only 4 months. Construction on the 350-meter tunnel would continue for another 4 years before coming to a halt in 1931. In 2012, work recommenced, and with an average of 25 workers on site per day, the Rotes Rathaus station was already for operation by December 2020. A symbolic connection between the old and the new, the Alex Tunnel now stands with one end in the past at its beginning in the 1920s and the other in 2020 when the Rotes Rathaus station was completed as part of the U5 gap closure project. The extension of the U5 underground line, first planned in the 1920s, was not realized until the 2010s, almost a century later. Boom, boom, boom.
Believe it or not.
Boom, boom. Yeah. Oh, engraved on the foot are the names of those who were significantly involved in the construction when the beam was unearthed. We thank everyone who has made the raising of this extraordinary object possible. Mike T. Kopsch, 2022, and Jürgen Windlof.
Okay.
So, did you guys ever hear about those crazy, the Ostbahnhof riots that went down in the 20s? When they invited all of these workers from Hamburg to take part in the extension of the extended, and lots of those people were hanging around the Ostbahnhof, and a lot of the Berliners didn't like them because they felt they were taking jobs away from the Berliners, and there was all kinds of tension, eventually resulting in 2 or 3 pretty significant big riots around the Ostbahnhof. You've heard about this? It's nuts, absolutely nuts.
It was Muskel Adolf.
Yeah.
They were competitors because the original criminals, they were forcing all the shopkeepers to to give protection money.
Right.
And then those hamburgers took that money away.
Okay, yeah.
So
Wow.
that's how the row came.
Okay.
Muskel Adolf. So here, this is one side of the Alexanderplatz, and we are looking at the east side, which was formerly the Rathauspassage. And there's one funny thing with these high rises that were built here. One is that they took into consideration that the Rotes Rathaus, the red
Municipal building? Yeah.
municipal building, is made out of bricks that are red.
Uh-huh.
So they mirrored that in that orange color.
Got it. Okay.
Middle pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you look at the Berens building over there, and
Yeah.
the way that the windows are shaped,
Yeah.
they almost copied it in the way that they shaped those windows over here.
Okay.
So the very nice thing of those modernist architectures is we have to build blocks, but we have to find ways to make these blocks look as light as possible.
Got it.
So it's not that those blocks start at the bottom, at the ground floor. No, they start after 3 stories, which is as if the upper part is standing on feet.
Okay.
So in front of it, you got a corridor where people can walk around it,
Sure.
which is one thing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the capitalist rebuilding of the basic part
Sure.
has used a material that doesn't rhyme with the upper material.
Okay.
And the other thing was, it was all walkable
Yeah.
on ground floor.
Accessible.
They could walk from one side to the other side. You think, okay, we have these shops and we have all these things.
Why don't we go around this way, you guys?
Okay.
Uh-huh.
We have all these things on display,
Uh-huh.
but what they did was they invited interior designers from Halle, they invited interior designers from Leipzig, they invited the interior designers from Dresden, and they all designed the interior of those shops. Even the display of those of that jewelry,
Cool.
it was on a little platform with a half a dome over it.
Right.
Again, a reference to the space age things.
Yeah.
Because that was how an entire city could look like.
Right.
Huh? And that was kind of luxury with marble on the floor, woodwork against the walls, and just a sign of well-being.
Yeah.
One thing very important. There was the wall. And the wall in the west was considered from, oh wow, now they have imprisoned their people. But immediately after building the wall, they went to not to spoil their population, but to pamper them.
Okay.
So there were lots of extras.
Okay.
You had a right to have a building,
Right.
a right to live somewhere. So
Okay.
you were never off the street. The rents were very low. The medical care was for free. Education was for free. So you had all these things that were for free or didn't cost it cost very much. And this was an example. Of course, here's a propaganda bit from this is what we're aiming at. And in the 70s, it was very much possible because they got all the crude oil from Russia. They could rework it and make a lot of money with that. That possibility was not there anymore after the 80s. And after the 80s, the GDR went towards bankruptcy.
Right.
So, which resulted in a decaying of this part of East Berlin. Because mind you, everywhere.
I saw that decay all over the DDR
Yeah.
in 1988 when I took a university trip there. Leipzig was horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not talking about Leipzig right now. Anyway, I didn't mean to interject. Continue.
No, but that was also in other parts of Berlin. That's the thing that you always have to keep in mind. If you look at it now, you look at with the eyes of your welfare experience, but then the scars of the war were everywhere,
Right.
and especially when they started building it here, the bullet holes, the ruins, it was everywhere. So as a counterpoint, of course you had to put a lot of energy in a thing that would become one of the crown jewels
Right.
of your system. And once again, this thing was not meant to be a propaganda project by the East German government. It's completely a project by the architects. They even said from the budget is 120 in order to get it accepted, and then overrun it by millions and millions and millions and millions.
Okay, I was curious about the Soviet role in any of this. How much input did they have?
None, because this was strictly an architectural.
Got it. No, I understand that, but I would have
thing.
thought that they would have had some sort of influence.
No,
if maybe even some sort of financial influence in it or fiscal influence in it.
Oh, the financial influence of the Soviet Union all the time was to get money and not to give money.
Right.
Because there was still the repair money that they had to give. And that was even so bad when they started to have their first factories. The things that came off the line, they also took it to the Soviet Union. They were very greedy in that respect. We go to the other side.
Sure, let's go. The Rote Rathaus, the Red City Hall, built between 1861 and 1869 during the reign of King Wilhelm I, who later became the first emperor in 1870-1871. That tower is about 97 meters tall. It was completely destroyed during the war, rebuilt between 1951 and 1958. One crazy thing that I heard about this place during the Third Reich is all city council members were basically chased away. And I can't remember his name, but he was able to actually sit in there until about 1935. And then the Nazis put Julian Lippert, the NSDAP, the Nazi party leader for the city of Berlin. He then sat in there, and I think he was, what was he referred to? As the city commissar. He wasn't the Bürgermeister anymore, he was the city commissar. The thing was completely destroyed during the course of the war. There was a 3-day-long firefight in that thing, apparently. Yeah, you can access the roof. The tower is accessible, but not to the public. One morning while picking up a group of guests, I did see a bunch of people up there. I don't know why they got to go up there and we can't, but anyway, yeah. I love the building. Have you been inside?
No.
It's beautiful inside.
I guess so.
It's really gorgeous inside, yeah. In fact, sometimes to distract guests who arrive too early,
You
and
can
stand
walk
around
in
you
like
with their coffee cups like this for like 20 minutes while, you know, yeah, you can go in. I said, why don't you guys go in there and look around? It's beautiful. Well, if you got a free moment sometime, you should go and look. Steps take you up to the top of that window.
Yeah.
I said, you know, you sort of up in, and then there's just big, huge ante-rooms left and right. It's stunning, absolutely stunning inside.
Great.
Yeah? So should we slowly make our way over this way? Rolling through the caverns of my mind. I love the sound of the water. Did you notice that various female groups have been using these female figures as part of their consciousness, as their awareness-raising props to indicate how objectified females have become by showing the detail here on these breasts? You see what I'm talking about? I didn't phrase that very well. We don't need to edit that into this podcast, do we? No. You know, it's always the penis too. Is always a little gold and bronze, you know, as well too. I had my group yesterday. We were at the Akademie der Künste, and we were going out the back to get around all the hustle and bustle. I took a shortcut to get over to the bunker, and we came across the Prometheus statue, and there was a huge group, another group coming in the other way, and so we were forced up the Prometheus statue. And I don't know if you've seen the Prometheus statue, but he's like there, chained, and there's this big cock. He's like, right, and I go, well. It was kind of funny. They were actually laughing too. Okay, so in the Akademie der Künste, okay, Berlin Alexanderplatz.
Yeah.
So you know about the Prometheus statue, right? Like the Prometheus statue disappeared in 1942. Okay, the Nazis were trying to protect it, and they buried it somewhere underneath because that's where Fritz Todt had his offices, and then later Albert Speer had his offices. So they never knew what happened to the Prometheus statue, and then I think in '95 when they were cleaning up over there. They were doing some digging, and voila, they found the walled-in Prometheus. The Nazis had, like, to protect it, like I mentioned in conjunction with this thing over here, you know, during the bombing attacks.
But we're standing here at the Marienkirche, very much one of the oldest buildings in Berlin, which was a thing that they obviously couldn't tear down. So it had to be integrated somehow in the whole structure. And once again, the use of colors is so beautiful and so neat. You see the high rises bordering at the other side. In fact, they wanted that street a pedestrian area.
Okay.
But they couldn't get that through.
Okay.
As well as that, which is now a pedestrian area.
Right.
That's how it would have worked. But they would have liked it there as well. So you see the little blue things that divide one apartment from the other one.
Yeah.
Up, and you follow my finger around the Marienkirche, and you see the blue at the feet of
TV Fernsehturm.
Of the Fernsehturm.
Okay.
And then you see the red blocks in the middle of the high rise, and you see the same color red in the roof of the Marienkirche. That's how they brought everything together. And that one, I think, was a hell of a project. That was very, very, very good.
Wow.
So you see again that you could walk around it, no? And again this little playfulness with the various elements of the high rise, making it light again. And the second, the first two is for restaurants again. You can go up and walk around it there. You see stairs and you have to walk into the restaurant, which is on the first floor. But on top of the first floor, you have this terrace-like walk around corridor again, which originally should have been with little green things, where children could play, also again where you could sit and have a pleasure to watch the Alexanderplatz. But the whole thing would bring together every segment of the population. If you were a professor or a factory worker, it was also for artists to have their studios there.
Sure.
So the thing that they're aiming at in Paris now, that everything should be at 10-15 minutes distance, everything that you need for living, it was already realized there. So that makes it a very, very modern square here, with all those details and all the attention that they got into it, just to construct a square that was fit for everyone, and not only for leisure, but also for living and creating your art, and even have.
It continues over there as well too, with like the Nikolaikirche and the Nikolai Theatre over there as well too. Here we've got more of these buildings. Yeah. Though I don't see the colors over there referencing anything in our immediate area. Maybe it's referencing more stuff going on around Nikolai. The Nikolaikirche over there.
That was a corner which was not which was neglected a little bit. They made a plan, and the plan was in that way that the Nikolaikirche got covered. As Ulbricht, he wanted to have it visible, one part, so that you could see it. So that part is a little bit neglected. The thing is those buildings, the Rathauspassage over there, and those buildings over there. And here it was with rose gardens for the colors, the fountains, the lights on it in the evening to make it everything more mysterious and looking. And that was a whole game. But also, a thing that I find very friendly, they put chairs there, and not chairs anchored in the pavement, but you could pick up your chair and you could put it to the side of the fountain. Have your feet in the water. You put it on the side and sitting on the floor. I must admit, this is one of the places that I would have liked to see in the 70s.
I did not visit.
With the mind I have now.
Got it. I didn't get the opportunity to visit Berlin in the 80s when we did our university trip here. We did visit Dresden, Meissen, Leipzig, Gera, but we did not visit East Berlin, unfortunately. I would have loved that. So back to the Marienkirche, it's my understanding that they extended the church for some reason after the war. They added an extra 30 feet to the front or the back. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Ah, okay.
No,
that may or may not be true. That may or may not be true.
Yeah. The only thing, that makes it interesting standing here, you see it's sloping down a little bit. Yeah. And I don't know if you tell your guest it, if you are in Berlin and something is elevated, there's always rubble under it.
There's always rubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is also under the Alexanderplatz.
Well, look, you can see the undulating ground. You can
Yeah.
see it. Like, you can actually feel it as you move around. You can feel that it's not perfectly level. It undulates at points. It rolls. That's because after the war, they just completely paved over this, planted over it. Voila, Alexanderplatz.
But to go back,
Potsdamer Platz is similar.
completely to the beginning, when we had this 15 or 16 or 17 blocks here,
Yeah.
that adds such a weird experience to walking here. You walking actually on the remains of those houses that were
Right.
here. That's a funny thing.
Yeah.
But there's another thing. When the wall came down, there was an article in the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung. Okay, we have to credit the guy there, Walter Herzog.
I forgot, Walter Herzog was his name?
Walter Herzog for folding all that. Yeah. There was an article in Frankfurter Allgemeine which is really devastating.
Really?
They were completely in favor of tearing down the Fernsehturm, and also that with their claws stretching out to all sides of the river. They thought it was horrendous, it had to disappear. And then when Berlin had this debt of 65 billion, and they started to divide the city to all enterprises and so for what to do. So,
To add costs onto costs, add on to
yeah,
costs.
and how to work. You know, they also had the idea to rebuild the original structure over here to make the Alexanderplatz.
The residential
disappear.
buildings.
No, to have all those blocks and the streets come
Yeah,
back again.
the old residential buildings that
Yeah,
used to be
yeah.
here. Right, they wanted to rebuild that?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was one idea.
Yeah. Kind of like that over there, right? Some of that's been completely rebuilt.
No,
But that was 80s, right?
Yeah,
Wasn't that rebuilt in the 80s?
Yeah, but you would have this historical, whatever, how do you call it, this careful historicism.
Got it, yeah.
To look at the present and the future, but also to take all you have from,
Sure.
from
You know
the
what?
past. It's a place where Martin Luther King used to talk to his.
He was here, as well as visiting the urban hospital at the Landwehr Canal in Kreuzberg. He visited that as well too.
There's one last part, and they struggled very much with the part of Alexanderplatz at the other side,
Right.
where it already became the Marx.
Right, did you want to talk about that? I know nothing about that whatsoever.
And there were various plans. They even wanted to do an underpassage to the Stralauer, so that you could come level with the side of the river, and all was like level with the river.
Would it
They
take
wanted-
you over to the Palace of the Republic, wouldn't it?
which wasn't built
Until
yet.
75.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And they also want to have like waterworks at the side of the river.
Well,
There was different ideas of what to put in the middle, and then they thought from, okay, we have this plan with Marx and Engels, why not put them in the
Sure.
middle and put everything around it, and,
Okay.
And then you got what it is now. And later on, with this Heinz Graffunder, he built the Palast der Republik, which was the far end of it, and had also a very beautiful aspect to it, because if you walked into it, you could walk to the far end facing the Alexanderplatz. You had very comfortable leather fauteuils where you could sink in, and huge windows. You would watch the Alexanderplatz as if it was a big painting or a big photograph for that matter. And this Mr. Graffunder, Heinz Graffunder, I think he was also responsible for the Rathauspassage.
Okay.
He went to Hamburg to study for 5 days the Congress Center in Hamburg, so that he got the idea from how to make this, which was eventually turned into a building that could have been used in every James Bond movie.
yeah.
And it's such a pity that they tore it down.
You aware of the fact too that, I mean, I think they're back at their original position. For a while, Marx and Engels were moved over here to the side. And I think that's because of U5 work that was going on for a while. But now they're back at their original position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of a big waste of space over there, if you ask me. I wish they'd do something with it.
There is a new plan for make it more garden-like, because in the times of the DDR they had roses and rhododendrons over there.
Okay.
Again, the adding of color and
Yeah.
and leisure and pleasure.
Got it. Hey, so just this might be important for the article. So last week I gave a tour for a group of about 35, if not 40, Australian blues and jazz fans who came to Berlin for a few days. And one thing they consistently remarked on was the shabby state of all of the green patches here. They asked, is the city just too poor to mow, or what in the world is going on? Okay. Then someone suggested the city might be leaving them this way because it makes everything more renewable. It's here for the moths, here for the butterflies, here for the insects, so that they can get done what it is they need to get done. Okay, basically an environmental measure. Do you know anything about that? Is that true?
I noticed this to my pleasure, and I mentioned this to a friend of mine in Amsterdam, and he said they did the same thing in Amsterdam as well. The borders of the streets, the little parks, they leave it because it's insects, it's the bees, it's the butterflies.
Right. Oh man, they bug those Australians, man.
And it's incredible.
Why don't they cut it?
It's incredible if you're in Kreuzberg.
Sure.
The flowers are 1 meter high.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it myself. Doesn't bother me. You've never seen this iron figure over here? It basically depicts a DDR era engineer in a hard hat and sort of like a German workman's coat. I think he's got like German worker boots on, and you can just see in his posture and his gesticulation how he's beholding and planning and dreaming about Alexanderplatz.
We go there.
Yeah, we should go there. I think it's perfect. Ever since we were over there at that fountain observing those water spouts, all of a sudden I got that summer breeze makes me feel fine, rolling through the chasms of my mind. So, completely off topic, but last Saturday I was finishing a tour. I got off over here at Rathaus, and sure enough, it was at the eve of the England-Spain game, and of course Alexanderplatz was just full of collared, knit, short-sleeve white shirts, okay? All of these pubs, all of these restaurants were just jam-packed with English people, okay? The women completely body positive, regardless of their physiques, just jammed into the tightest summer stuff you could possibly imagine. Tons of frosted hair, gold, diamonds, so much makeup you can't even believe it, right? And then just groups of roly-poly English guys with little round cheeks and sort of no jaws and, you know, no lips, just hugging each other, vomit all over the place. And they had their England flags, you know, the St. George cross, with the, you know, the Blackthorn Rovers, or the Sherwood Yeoman, some, you know, and of course they were all. It was super fun, but you could see the wait staff after a while, just going, okay, this is neat. All right, is this how long is this going to go on for? Are we going to be here all night? But he made a lot of money on the bar. Yeah, so I guess it's a blessing and a curse.
On the Karl Liebknechtstraße,
Yeah.
I wonder what those architects would feel like seeing all these trashy stores here.
Yeah.
You know, it's no taste at all. It's all just throwaway forms. So,
Sure.
but okay, maybe it belongs also to a big city.
I got to tell you, when we visited Leipzig in '88 or '89, whenever that was, before the wall came down, yeah, I mean, we were absolutely appalled by what we saw there. Here they were telling us the entire time, telling us about our cities, full of filth, full of crime, and we're literally standing in the middle of Leipzig with buildings looking like the war had just ended 2 days ago, street surfaces broken, open sewage lines, rats and mice running around all over. It was insane. Yeah, and we were kind of like, why are they showing us this? You know?
And then it was an international city, because they had the international fairs every year
they had,
over there.
right, it was also the city of Johann Sebastian Bach, right?
No, but I mean, they had a lot of international guests coming every year.
Right, because of the Jazz Fest, right?
No, because of the international fairs. It was strictly commercials.
Oh, right. You're talking about the Messe. The
Yeah,
Messe.
yeah.
Right. Also, too, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Leipzig also famous for its book fair? I think the book fair was a big deal
also,
too.
very important printers city. We're almost back at a former podcast
Exactly.
area. Great.
Well, that's how it. Right. So after we went our separate ways that day, Adrian and I walked down this way, and I've always known he's been here, but I always forget. There he is, right there. I can see him already.
Here we are at the bronze statue of a worker. You can even see the scarf of what they had in those days, of a worker who represents one of the hundreds and hundreds of workers who helped building the Alexanderplatz. And this anonymous person impersonalized these workers. So you have been listening to a Radio On historic episode special on the
Alexanderplatz.
You have heard a lot of stories while we were strolling along, because that's what you do on the Alexanderplatz. Stroll or sit and tell each other stories. I have been talking about the Alexanderplatz. Jason has been adding various stories from things happening in and around Berlin, in and around the time we live in. We were escorted by Adrian Shephard with his camera and recording device, and the fact that you are listening to this now in an impeccable way represented and brought to you is because of the editing. So we were from left to right, Adrian Shephard.
I'm Jason Honea, aka Boy True. I am the shitty listener.
And my name is Rinus Van Alebeek, and I thank you for listening. Keep on listening to Radio On Berlin, and if you care to donate, oh man, we would love to spend your money on a beer. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Guten Abend, meine Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer, liebe Genossinnen und Genossen. Diese Sendung heute wird nach fast 30 Jahren die kürzeste sein, nämlich die letzte. Diese Sendung 30 Jahre die kürzeste sein. Diese Sendung heute die kürzeste sein, nämlich die letzte. Auf Wiederschauen.
You have been listening to
Radio on Berlin. Yeah!